Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanee and Clarky visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we all?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
I am Grace, as I learned from my friend Mr. Clark, yeah. Oh, how many expressions do I use that I learned from my friend Mr. Clark? Many.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, no, I'm good. A little bit pre-gamed because a little bit sick of everyone expecting me to do everything for them and be all things to them. But other than that, yeah, really good.
Are you pre-gaming because they've been annoying you all day, so at about 11 o'clock you opened out the wine so you could have a real crack back at them? Or is
about
it after
4:30.
work? Yeah, right.
4:30 and the pirate juice because, I like a bit of the old
this is
rum.
Look out, everyone. This is going to get interesting.
Shit's going to get real. That's right. Anyway.
Oh, very good. Well, I think I've got a head cold today. So for listeners who, if this is your first one, I don't normally sound like this, but I'll give it my best shot at telling you stuff that sounds funny or interesting in this voice.
Hit me with your best shot.
Same thing.
Why don't you hit me with your best shot?
Nice.
Okay, cool. Fire away.
Righty-o. Game on. And Swanee, before we get on to what you're going to drink, can you just tell us the important emergency phone call you had? Because I think that's quite funny.
I've just received a phone call from my eldest son who has just arrived back from being out for the afternoon. And when I took all of my children out lunchtime to get haircuts, all of our bins are out the front. And I said to my younger two, can you bring the bins in when you get back? And, of course, I brought them back. They didn't bring the bins in. Eldest son's arrived home. So he's called me to tell me, as an emergency, because he knows I'm doing this, that he's the one who's bringing the bins in. And that really tells you all you need to know about my life. It's that exciting. That's an emergency phone call for me. We've got to tell her. But
it's important because he doesn't want anyone else to be acknowledged for that. And that's fair enough. Good job. Good jobs, A. Good job, A.
Yeah.
Snaps for A.
When I grow up, I want to be the receiver of phone calls from people who tell me that they brought the bins in.
I just wish someone would fucking bring the bins in. It's not me.
And not think they've done an amazing job for it.
Honestly, to get them to do that is an absolute task. That's the only thing they did. And I said to them, I said, oh, please, can you take the bins out? And they're like, yeah. And I mean, half the time I end up doing it myself, which is obviously part of the problem. But that's how tedious things get. It's that level.
Yeah.
I understand you, Schmitty, where it's like,
that's why I'm
easier and quicker to do it yourself. Yeah.
That's why I'm pre-gaming,
it's
because I
easier
do
just to
everything
get
for
drunk.
everyone. Oh, my God. It's just, Jesus Christ. People, you're adults. Can you sort your own shit out? Anyway, sorry.
Stop using the Lord's name in vain. It's really offensive.
I will. I'm a Catholic, and I'll have to atone for it. Anyway.
You've got a big weekend, you guys, haven't you? It's kind of very special for the Christians.
I know.
Oh, yes. Well, Christ dies and he gets resurrected.
Yeah, tomorrow, right?
And then we have some chocolate. And no one remembers why, and it's all great.
I was trying to explain to one of our boys today.
Us guys, I love the way you go, you guys.
Well, one of the kids said, why is Easter such a big deal? There's not much
rebirth.
To it, really.
It's about rebirth.
And I was like, oh, religion aside, we were sort of talking about, I said, well, when you're young, I said, it's really cute, Easter, I guess, with, the bunnies and
Easter
the spring
bunny,
type thing, although we're in autumn, because obviously it was done for a Northern Hemisphere audience, not for us. I mean, we had done that thing, which is so Australian, I think, where by the time I was probably, 10, let's say, maybe even younger, we had just changed that holiday into something where we could get something that we wanted as well. So it started off being mum buying us pajamas and then going, oh, for Easter, what I'd like is, and it was never massive, but it was like we'd sort of done what we'd done to Christmas to Easter. It's like, oh, don't worry about the religious content or the chocolate eggs or whatever else. I'd like a pair of pajamas, or I'd like you to get a general pants for me. I just saw it as another opportunity to get something that I really wanted.
We would go out in the middle of nowhere on the houseboat and we'd come, Mum would insist that we go to church for Sunday Mass.
Oh.
So we'd all get on the speedboat in freezing cold weather.
That's very Hollywood. In the speedboat.
Well, no, please don't misunderstand.
Do you know what a cigarette boat is? They're those super thin ones that go at high speeds. That's what I'm envisaging with like some numbers written on the side, like you're competing.
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. Haynes Hunter.
Off to church.
And we'd jump on this boat, all 6 of us, even though that was illegal at the time. And we would come back it would take us, I reckon, at least half an hour just to get from the houseboat to where we came to the HZ Holden. No.
Oh.
We'd get in the stinky Holden, and then we'd drive another 20 minutes into town. And we'd go to a really boring church that we don't normally go to. And to your point, Carla, about things that you'd like to get out of for Easter, we all got a Big M and a pie.
Oh, that's a win.
And that was the win. We woke up in the morning, there were eggs on the table, and then we were ripped from the eggs.
Yeah.
And we had to go and have a religious bullshit.
Ripped from the
and
eggs.
then we were ripped from the eggs, and we had to go
I'm
and do
still
all this
hunting,
shit.
Mother. I'm still hunting.
There was no hunt. There was no
No
hunt.
one
They
did
were all
that.
on the
But that's
table.
another one of those things. It's one of those things because it looks good for Instagram. Honestly, I don't know anyone when we were younger who had an Easter egg hunt. Your mum would put some stuff out, wouldn't she? She'd wake up and go, "Oh, the Easter bunny's been. There you go."
Yeah, exactly. There were no hunts. We were all on the table.
Now it's
Here's
all
yours,
beautiful,
here's
and the children
yours.
have got little decorative baskets. It's like there's so much tat you can buy.
Bullshit. That never happened to us. It was just, here's your shit. Now get in the boat. We're going to we're going to
There's
church.
the chocolate bit
The
sorted.
pilgrimage is about to start.
Clarky, can you remind me who our secret guest is?
Well, yes,
what's her
I'm
secret
glad
name?
you asked. We do have a guest today. She's an expert in risk management. And so, as all our guests have, she has an alias. And her alias is Risky Sour. Welcome, Risky.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome, Risky.
Thank you for
All our
having me.
guests who don't want to be named, I would say.
Yes, it's death by association.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
fair enough, fair enough. Well, welcome, Risky. It's nice to have you with us.
Thank you so
on
much.
the Trial by Wine panel. And just before we go forward, have we covered what we're drinking? I don't think we have.
I
What are
interrupted
you
Carla
guys
when she
drinking?
was about to talk about that. So,
You'll only yawn if you find out what I'm drinking.
oh, quick then, let's get that out
It's
of
in
the
a
way.
red can, so
Zero.
done. Cheers. Move on. Next. Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
I know. It's crazy days over here. Clarky and Risky Sour, what are you guys on?
Well, Risky Sour has brought up a bottle of wine, so I'll let her do the discussion on the wine.
Oh, yes, it's very exciting. So it's a 2020 Chardonnay from McGlashan's estate.
I think we like to call it Chardonnay on Trial by Wine.
Well, sorry, my apologies. I didn't see that in my
Very
notes.
highbrow.
My apologies, you shunt. That's
are
appropriate.
Yes, so my Chardonnay 2020 McGlashan's is a family-owned business on the Bellarine Peninsula. So you'll find the winery just outside of Ocean Grove. I think they've been there for like 50 years or something. It's like
Really?
full on. And they've just opened a brewery in there as well. And it's
brewery?
a brewery.
Lovely. A brewery. What's a brewery?
I have to work on my
A brewery.
This is going to get better
Yeah.
as the day goes on.
But yes, and
Messy.
this lady, the owner of the winery, actually goes to my gym as well. So it's not a bad drop. What do you think?
Lovely.
It's very drinkable, yes. I think we
I'm
could...
still going to ask you to get close to the microphone, though, Whiskey Sour.
Yes, my
It's
apologies.
risky.
Thank you. Did I say? I thought I said Risky Sour.
What?
I don't know. I've had a few on mine. I've had a few salad jerry's and
Dr. Pepper?
creamy soda.
Oh, dear.
Diet creamy soda.
Right,
Yeah,
diet
delicious,
creamy soda.
yeah.
Fab-o.
With the Morgan.
Fab-o.
Shall we introduce ourselves?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Who are you?
Well, I am Sailor Jerry Schmitty.
And I'm Coke Zero Swanee.
And I'm Chardonnay Yashunt Clarky. And together we are Trial by
Bye.
Wine.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Okay.
Who's got a
so,
story?
I believe it's you.
I do like to
Trixie.
ask who's got a story when it's my turn. Yeah, I do have a story. How good's that? But so this story I've got today is a tale of banking scandal. That's banking with a B. Not
Big crime.
Not like
Yeah.
episode 2, which was a wanking scandal.
Same.
She was, yeah.
Yeah.
Feral. Yep.
So we're going to get straight into the story, and then we'll unpick it a little bit, and we'll get some expert commentary from Risky Sour, as well as some incredible humour and probably some bad humour. But that's the way we roll, eh?
Risky Sour, you are aware of our format, which means that you can chime in whenever you like.
I will do. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Carla,
Go for
I'm
your
going to
life.
pour myself another wine, just as a
You got to try and catch up.
no, just
Pour
as a
me a wine too,
defensive
sir,
mechanism
please. Thank you.
against what's about to come from Schmitty. I think
45 minutes of silence and then the tirade.
it's
Yeah, okay.
sounding pretty rough already.
Oh,
All right, let's talk banking scandals. So my sources are Sydney Morning Herald, Astor Legal, The Guardian, the Westpac
Good source.
website,
This is sounding way
my-
too highbrow.
What the fuck?
I know, right?
Where's Lad Bible?
Who am I? The Financial Review.
All that's interesting?
Okay, enough. This is just sounding like work.
Murderpedia?
Okay, no, but so you know what I'm like with my sources normally. Guess what the last source is?
Lad Bible.
Yeah!
For the
Our
win.
favourite.
It was
There's
a
always
very,
one.
very brief Lad Bible article, and to be
I
honest,
bet it was.
I didn't even use it. I just had to Google it to see if they covered it, and to their credit,
Just
they
in
did.
case.
Yeah.
Just in case.
So this is a tale of banking scandal involving Westpac. The way I'm going to present this, I'm using articles from around 2019 and 2020. So sometimes we'll talk about things that appear to be current day, but really they're 2 or 3 years ago. So just bear that in mind. And in case, because people will listen and go, it's not like that anymore, you idiot. And to be honest, I don't know whether it is.
Well, they should shut up.
I don't know.
Frankly, of all the things that they could listen to that we've said, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be
Yeah.
the thing that drives them to say that outrageous
Well, that's
comment.
true.
Oh,
Yes, and I
Any listener who has a problem with that, email us at trialby1.gmail.com and I will respond.
Clown Passion
Anyway.
20.
I was going to say with Clown Passions with the code. She's going to give you a discount code for Clown Passions.
I say that because no one has ever emailed us, so I feel confident of that.
All right,
Anyway.
that's safe. Let's
see
just
what we
hope
can
it's
do.
not one of Westpac's lawyers
Yeah,
that is the
yes.
first one to email us.
Indeed.
Well, I'll say I'll just refer you to Mr. Clark.
Right, that should be fun. All right, so in 2019, it was revealed that Austrac, who is a banking security organisation,
regulator?
a regulator. Thank you, Risky.
No worries.
Had discovered over 23 million breaches of money laundering legislation. The total amount of the illegal transactions was in excess of $11 billion. The offending occurred through the Westpac.
What the fuck?
$11 billion.
The billion?
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the fuck?
That is many money, isn't it?
That's many dollars.
That's more than I can even imagine ever.
Yeah,
And that's
imagine
What?
counting it. 1, 2,
Oh, where was I? One.
outrageous.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking hell.
So the offending occurred through the Westpac international transfer system, which allowed customers to transfer money overseas undetected being the key. Some of the countries that the funds were transferred to included the Philippines, Mexico, and other Southeast Asian countries, all of which we love. However, it appears that at least 250 customers were able to conduct suspicious transactions to these countries. And brace yourself, Schmitty, this is the bit. It has been alleged these transactions were related to child sex trafficking in those countries.
And by the way, did you say 250?
250 customers.
Not 250,000, not 200.
250 customers.
But you were like talking billions a minute ago.
Correct.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
they're different concepts.
So-
One's about customers, one's about money.
Yeah, so 23 million breaches of money laundering legislation because they weren't tracking all of those
That's how many
transactions
transactions,
Okay.
right?
with worth $11 billion.
Totaling 11 billion.
Hidden within that.
Not all of it in child
Correct.
pornography.
No,
scams.
Yeah.
250 people.
Yeah. So some of the others were several hundred other individuals who were able to send funds overseas to purchase luxury goods such as cars, boats, homes. However, these customers could not be precisely identified. Would you like to know the reason? Austrac claims that Westpac refused to impose the global standard for international transactions through what we know as SWIFT, so the Society for Worldwide International Financial Telecommunication. You may have heard of SWIFT through some of the sanctions put on Russia recently.
Or if you've ever made an international transaction, you're asked for a SWIFT code. Every
Yeah.
country has a code, so you can push it to the right space. I can't remember Australia's.
I must never have done that then.
Yes.
I don't.
I have.
Yeah.
When I lived overseas, I've used the Swift
In
codes quite.
Monaco.
Don't need to say that, but yeah.
And each bank has a Swift code as well.
I'm sure that will only play into the narrative of this, I'm sure. I've been thinking about that from the beginning.
Yeah. So Austrac said that Westpac refused to use Swift because they believed it was too expensive. So in lieu of Swift, Westpac...
I'm surprised they're allowed to.
Ah, well, as it turns out, things go a little bit sour if you don't manage your risk appropriately, don't they, Risky?
They do.
Do things go a little bit skewy for Westpac, perhaps?
They did.
They sure did.
Yes. Excellent unmuting opportunity.
You're welcome. I'm here all day.
So Westpac set up its own system called LightPay. This was used for small transactions of $3,000 and below. They also set up the Australian cash management platform capable of facilitating payments of up to 100 million. So I feel like the world says, I know, excellent face.
What the actual fuck? 100
million, yeah.
It's like it's capped at 10 grand, like my transfers or...
Well, there's nothing that you can buy for that amount, really, is there?
Oh, yes, there is.
Well, okay.
Well, in terms
International-
of
international arms,
boats.
in terms exactly.
boats,
Yeah, but for people,
guns,
even still, there would only be a
helicopters.
handful. No, there'd be a handful. At 100 million, there'd be a
think?
handful. Of boats,
I think you would be
handful of
surprised
boats.
how
I
many
reckon
$100 million
military involvement in the
transactions go on.
Solomon Islands.
No,
would
no,
probably
no. I'm
go
not
for
saying how many
something
100
like
million.
that.
Hey, Risky,
I'm not saying that.
could you just add your intel here?
I think you'd be surprised at how many $100 million transactions go on. It's not.
If it's more than one, I would
Yeah.
be surprised.
I was saying there are very few things that have that value that you could legitimately
Yes,
say.
correct.
You know, if you're talking about, items, whether it's not for a company or whatever else, but for a personal expense, there probably is, as I said, a handful of boats, if that worth 100 million. Even property up at that level, there's not a lot. I mean, you would be hard pressed to get to that level with any kind of transaction. Smaller one, sure. Millions or whatever else, but that's a hell of a lot. 100
But
million
can
for a
you
single
buy-
transaction.
But a
Can you buy
transaction is not.
multiples?
Transaction is
Yeah,
not
it
to
doesn't
buy
have
something.
one-to-one.
Yeah.
Transaction
No,
is
it's
just
not
to
one-to-one.
move, to move
Yeah.
money from one space
Ah,
to
okay,
another for
fair
a
enough.
result.
Got it.
But Swanee, on
Okay.
that point, how much would you
But you have to
pay?
give reasons, don't you? When every time we move money, we have to say what we're using or moving that money for. So what reasons would they be giving at 100 million?
Well, they'd have to give reasons at 100 million. But we're
Sending
not
money
talking,
home to my sick
Yeah,
mum?
it could be all sorts of different
but
things.
that's what I'm saying. Surely, where are the checks and balances there? I'm going down a rabbit hole.
No,
Well,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
so
because
this
it's against what
This is all
Westpac
about
did.
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
checks and balances.
Yeah.
But
Because I just know that when we move anything, we have to give the reason. If you're moving money as a gift or whatever, it has to be
At that
so spelled
amount,
out.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Swanee,
Legislation.
because we're often moving 100 millions around.
Swanee, if you wanted to have military involvement in the Solomon Islands, hypothetically speaking, how much would you pay for
Yes.
that? I feel like 100 million
Yeah,
might be there.
charming. Yeah, okay, I'm with you.
It's not a reason that would probably get
Yeah,
through,
you put on-
but
you put on-
yes,
They'd-
yes,
they'd
it
probably
might
Probably
get you
just
a
take cash
couple
over
of tanks.
and say let's
Yeah.
in a big ship. Let's not keep
Yeah.
this in the banks.
Yeah, let's put
Um,
that through.
So the fallout has plunged Westpac into crisis and rocked the financial sector. And the allegations are outlined in a statement of claim that the financial intelligence agency Austrac has lodged in the federal court. So headlines at the time were dominated by allegations that some breaches caused the bank to facilitate child abuse in the Philippines, a revelation that drew searing condemnation from Prime Minister Scott Morrison down. Went all the way to the top.
It did.
So the scandal claimed the scalps of the now ousted chief executive Brian Hartzar and chairman Lindsay Maxted, and calls continue for more blood at the board level. And again, this is back in the day. The article I'm reading now was set in November, December-ish, and the AGM for Westpac was set for the 12th of December.
Yep.
And an independent review into accountability at the bank is underway. Shareholder class actions lawyers are circling, and the size of the fine imposed by the regulator is yet to be revealed. How could so many transactions escape the bank's notice? What does the law say that a bank has to keep track of? And what does the scandal mean for other banks? I'm glad you asked. The first question I've got, and I do have some answers here, but maybe Risky, you can possibly answer this, and
Possibly.
if you can, go for it.
We'll see.
What does the law say a bank has to monitor?
With international transactions?
Yeah.
I can't answer it down to the legislation because
I'll
I'm not
start
the
some of
expert.
it, and then if you can think of
Yeah.
something.
Go for it.
Record keeping, reporting, and customer identification are at the heart of a bank's compliance
Especially
obligations.
the ID. Yes.
Especially the ID. Is
Yeah.
that why they ask you for more ID than you could possibly collect?
Yeah,
when
they
you
kind of
first
do.
open it?
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you go to open a bank account and they say, have you got a birth certificate, a driver's license, Medicare, a bill, and you're like, far
Well,
out.
it used to be the whole
just got out of school.
100-point system. Well,
Yeah.
essentially, it used to be. It's changed slightly, and Austrac sort of oversee that, but it's still essentially the same thing.
Right.
So yes,
That might make no sense to our overseas listeners, or would it make?
yeah,
they
it's
would
across
all
the
get
world.
that.
Yeah, so you generally will find the same system for certainly
license,
transaction
passport.
legislation. Yeah,
something else. Like
Utility
serious
driver's
bills.
license and a
things.
passport will get you across the line.
Index finger.
Yeah.
and
Your eyeball.
in some
Yeah.
countries, they do use your index finger. So
Do they-
I've
does
Do they
worked
anyone
in.
use
take it or
DNA?
just
No, seriously. So in some countries, certainly in Asian countries, when you sign a mortgage, you actually put your finger in an inkwell and you sign with your fingerprint as opposed to with your signature.
Not actually your index finger. They don't
No,
cut it off.
well,
Yeah.
that's if you don't pay. Well, that may
They kn-
happen.
they
but
know
at
which-
least they
Come
know
and
the
cut
right
shit
index.
off.
They've got
Yeah.
the fingerprint so
Yeah,
they can
to make sure
they're
they get
cutting
the right finger. Because
Uh,
often you'll put your brother up saying it's
it's
you,
him.
right?
Yeah.
So
Well, hang on a minute.
that's why they do
We've
it,
got
yeah.
the print.
But yes, they actually do that. We don't do that in
Wow.
Australia, but they still do that a lot
I'm glad we
overseas.
don't do that.
Mm.
If something goes wrong in the process, it quickly gets out of hand, multiplying out of sight, says law firm Hunt and Hunt partner Richard Williams. I
Hunt
wonder if
and
it's
Hunt.
like Greg Hunt and Greg Hunt.
Possibly.
Good-o.
C. Hunt?
In fact, the fact that Westpac, you've got 23 million breaches, that just shows the magnitude of the reporting obligation. So you can understand why it doesn't work. Has she fallen off her chair again?
I'm here.
As part of a bank's license to operate, it must work with financial intelligence agency Austrac to help stop criminals cleaning money or financing terrorism or dirty sex trafficking. Austrac was established on the heels of the 1988 Final Transactions Reports Act for banks and other deposit-taking institutions to lodge reports on cash transactions over 10,000 or payments deemed suspicious.
Correct.
Thank you.
No worries.
During this time, Austrac had what Mr. Williams described as an assistance role with the banks, providing education and support to make sure they were complying with the law. And then in 2006, the Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorism Act came in, and that imposed much broader obligations as to know your customer, Mr. Williams said. How well do you know your customer, Risky?
Well, you've got to. There's a whole heap of different systems that you have in banks, and sometimes when certain products are developed, there might be some appetite to not use those systems because of all sorts of different reasons. So, not sure with the light option that they went with. There might have been some things that may have been overlooked because it's well under the 10,000. So that could have had something to do with it. But getting to know your customers, obviously, and that's what Austrac put it. It's called Know Your Customer as opposed to the 100 points now, is you need to identify your customer. You need to be very sure on who you're dealing with.
Do you take them out to the pub for a wine to get to know them?
Well, in the old days, we're allowed to, but we're not allowed to anymore. So, yeah.
What do you do then?
Yeah, well, you just got to have a bit of a chat.
Ask them
make
boring
sure.
questions.
Yeah, lots of boring questions. Make sure the ID is genuine. All sorts of different things that you can report and track. If you're unsure, you can go through to different departments.
Do you ask what their favourite footy team
deeper.
is?
You can most people use their password as their favourite football team, so it's usually a dead giveaway.
That makes
So
sense.
don't do that, listeners. Not a great idea.
Okay.
See, that's never crossed my mind.
Really?
Unsurprisingly.
Yes.
I don't have a favourite.
Well, if you
football
don't
team
have
either.
one, yeah, that will certainly
But
help.
now that you've said that, I'm because sometimes I think, oh, I wonder if that's a giveaway. And now I think, oh, no, I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
Because
Their
I now
name
know what
is-
everybody else is doing.
If they are Abramovich, maybe they will. Yeah.
I'm going to go and change all of
Or did
my
Chelsea?
passwords before this podcast goes to air.
if that's all you do out of this podcast, I will be a happy lady.
Right. Thanks for the tip. Hang on a minute. We're just having a little yapping problem. The obligations under this act have progressively increased over time to the point Mr. Williams says the banks are now the policemen.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think that's significant, and we probably don't want expert testimony on the basis it might incriminate you. But to me, if the world says let's use Swift, and one bank says, "Oh, that's a bit expensive. Why don't we just come up with a slow or not so Swift?" And then they're supposed to police things. Things could get out of hand pretty quickly without somebody looking. So he also said that Austrac's role changed over time. So they've moved from an assistance model to an enforcement model.
Correct.
The regulator's chief executive now has powers to issue fines for a greater range of offences, and reports are required on every international transaction, no matter the size. So that means, like, if it was a 5-center, you'd have to do a report still.
Yep, essentially, yes. Or you have to keep record of such.
And so what he does say, and I think this is a really important thing, making sure a bank is compliant is a costly and thankless task. If it works, nothing happens.
Correct. And this is the thing with these kind of cases and these scandals is usually we hear about them because it didn't work, all right? So we don't hear about all the things that do, which is like people that thankfully I'm employed in the industry. So we work tirelessly to make sure that things do work, and we do know our customers, and people are protected, and people's money is protected, and their space is protected. But
and how much money, and I don't need you to answer this, but how much money must a bank spend to track all of this and keep records of it all so that nothing happens?
And that's just this. This is just international transactions. What about domestic transactions? And then we've got mortgages, unsecured lending. We've got everything that needs to be tracked to make sure, one, we know our customer, there's no fraudulent activity. And that also there's a massive piece of legislation called responsible lending, RG 209. And that is to make sure that lending is not unsuitable for the customer, which is an oxymoron, not unsuitable. Weird. I always
We're
find
not ripping them off.
Yeah. And the banks have an obligation to make sure that they can prove that to bodies like Austrac, but also at the end of the day, it's to the customer.
It sounds fascinating. I'm surprised that there aren't more people in this industry.
Oh, there is a lot of people in this industry. If you had to, I'll give you a general thing of how much it costs the bank. If you look at $100, how much do you think the risk element of a bank would cost a bank for every $100?
13
cents or $13? Nah, much lower.
Oh.
Yeah.
13 cents.
Yeah. So if you averaged, if you looked before 2019, no, it's just around 5 cents.
Hey,
not
did you
all
Google
banks,
that, or are you
but
just
some banks.
Incredibly
smart.
No,
You're smart.
I'm just incredibly smart.
Carla,
Yeah,
Schmitty knows everything about crime, doesn't she?
Yeah. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot.
She's involved in quite a lot of criminal activity.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I've already written her down. We'll
We
go
talked
through
about
her.
how many $1 billion before. Like,
Yeah. It's a lot of money.
take 5 cents of every $1 billion. That's a shit ton.
When did you develop a stutter?
When I learned how to say $1 billion.
Can you say it's Ken coming to kill me
Yes, I can.
without stuttering?
It's Ken coming to kill me. Also, it's multiple $1 billion.
Oh, goodness. There goes my COVID cough. Right. So let's talk about how do banks track overseas transactions?
I can tell you at a very high level. So obviously,
Do that.
Yeah, I will. So obviously, customers make
Hang
those
on.
transactions.
Do they come up with some dodgy in-house tracking system?
Well, clearly some banks do.
Oh, interesting.
Not all banks.
Not all banks.
But certainly some banks do, and
But Westpac
did.
Yeah.
So
I can
Let's
do
call it
that.
how we see it.
I'm not spending
call it how we
millions on
see it.
joining Swift. I can do that, says
Fuck that for a lark.
someone
5
in
cents
IT.
in the dollar. Yeah, exactly. 5 cents in the bucket. Let's do it.
You pay me $1 million and I'll come up with the best system ever.
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it is, right? So at the end of the day, with all of these decisions, there's a person that makes a decision. So you can put as many checks and balances and controls in place as you like, but at the end of the day, there is always a person that will override that decision if necessary, and that's sometimes the CEO, CFO, CRO, whoever they might be. So it just depends. It depends on making money.
CFM?
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 Couldn't fuck, no. Can't fuck me. No.
You know those boots?
What are you saying to me?
You get CFM
I
boots?
thought I was a guest.
Yes.
Is it? Oh, I've never had those
You are
boots.
a guest. You're a very welcome guest.
I've never ever had a pair of those boots.
Of what boots?
The knee highs.
Yeah.
I've always admired
Me
people
neither.
that can wear them with the really big stiletto on them. Like,
Really?
my goodness.
Why is that?
Because I know I couldn't.
Because you can't.
Yeah, you can't.
You always what?
You mean like Julia Roberts in...
Yeah. Pretty
Yeah,
Woman.
come fuck me
You've
boots.
been drinking
and
too
she
much
had the
Chardonnay.
she had the condoms down the side.
She did.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes, but she
Yeah.
was a hooker.
Oh.
Have you always wanted to be a hooker? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, look. Now that I'm amongst friends.
Moving right along.
I'm so glad you asked. I've been wanting to get this out for years.
I know, right?
Oh, goodness.
Oh, let's talk about banking law. It's so exciting.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's
Okay,
do that.
Back to the
Yeah.
story. So, do you want to tell us about how banks track overseas transactions?
Yes, so
Or would you
basically,
like my dry as fuck?
you could have it dry as fuck if you like, but at the end of the day,
No, back to the
there's
banking story, remember?
people, process, controls, and systems. That's how they do it.
People, process, controls, and
Systems. That's how they do it. It's a long-winded way of. There's a whole heap of things. There's control. So as a risk professional, put controls in place.
Yeah.
So controls are usually processes that override or that override something that's happening, and then that should stop it or mitigate the risk.
Yeah.
So-
Mitigation and response.
Correct.
That's right.
There's two things I always love to say. You mitigate or you detonate, and those
Ooh.
controls will help you
Ooh.
understand that.
Schmitty normally detonates after she's been
Well,
pre-gaming for...
She's about to.
It's
Yeah.
quite funny you should say that because at some point after I was crisis management response lead for my organisation, I don't even know how, was asked to be the lead of compliance, audit and risk.
Oh, fabulous.
Did you strap an explosive device to yourself to say mitigate or I'm going to detonate?
No.
And then just open your jacket and wink.
I just learnt about risk profiles and bullshit and shit and stuff.
Risk appetite.
And,
So you practically work for the FBI.
yeah.
we didn't have an appetite. No appetite. No appetite for risk.
Did nothing at all.
Appetite for destruction?
None whatsoever. We had no risk appetite. We had shit all.
Had alcohol appetite by the sounds of it.
Oh, so my question is, and it may be a bit premature because I'm not sure how much further.
I'm
the
used
story
to
has
premature
go.
in this house. It's fine.
Oh, good. That's good. If we're talking specifically about Westpac, and I imagine it's any bank, but I mean that's who we're talking about. Would there be people within the institution who their sole responsibility is risk? So when they're sitting at their desk looking at what their task is versus what the people who've created this product, for what was it called, Light? What would they be going? Forgive me, may I just? I'm a bit uncomfortable
I don't think
with
they
this.
would say,
Would
"Forgive
they have had an
me."
in-house team going?
Yes.
I don't.
Usually.
I'm not sure this is quite what I would be. Or
I think she's getting to the end of
would
the
they
story.
just be?
Carla,
Oh, sorry.
Carla,
No, it's good, Carla. It's a great question.
So, Carla, to give you a different spin on that, if we spoke about
Yeah.
the bin story at the start, so if it's your responsibility to bring in the bins and you
Yes.
don't, and then someone
Yes.
else has to take over and do that for you,
Yes.
what happens?
And that's the so what?
Like,
Just where just nobody really
like
knows, so no
once-
one's really
once
responsible,
we-
and everyone goes, "Oh, it was their responsibility."
once we finish, are you going to go out there and stomp some heads, or are you just going to go, honestly, I don't want to hear about it?
Yeah, probably the.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
that's
that's-
probably what happens.
That's the story we're
Yeah.
looking at. Yeah.
I'm
Well,
making
that's
shit
it,
up
like,
now, but, I could imagine someone just going, you know what, I just don't want to hear it.
I'm not interested in who
Or
took the bins out.
you've got people that will absolutely put their hand up, and it could be
Fall on their sword.
Whistleblower,
yes,
whatever, just
yeah.
that sort
So
of problem
all,
is, yeah.
all corporates, including banks, will have a whistleblower program of such,
Mm-hmm.
and that is tightly managed in certainly most banks I've ever worked with. But
Just not
also,
this
there's stigma in some cultures about using those particular channels,
Ruins your
Uh-huh.
career.
and what comes about from that with rumor and innuendo. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff, but I think it's a very valid question. There will always be people that are at those desks going, that doesn't look right, and it will
Yeah.
very much depend on the culture that they work in, whether that goes
Okay.
up to where it needs to be.
Mm.
So I've worked across the industry with lots of different bosses, and some will absolutely take things on
Some
board,
will bring the bins in,
and some will bring
wait
the
for
bins
someone
in
else to bring them in.
and sit there and talk to you and try and seek to understand,
Yep.
as opposed to being understood. And then some will go, no, it's cool, just carry on, right? So
Wow.
You
will,
don't bring
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bins in, I'll bring the bins in.
but that's in anything. So I mean, I've worked in
no, I agree.
retail,
I agree.
and your
Yeah,
manager in
right.
retail
Yeah, of course.
goes, you put the
Yeah.
rings in the wrong place. I used to work in jewelry many years ago, and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. Where another manager go, no, put them in the right place and clean
That's
them. So
an
it just
important-
depends
It's
on the
important
person.
that you say I worked in jewellery, because last week we did a story where somebody had 9 vulvas in a box.
That was fine.
And
What are we
Yeah,
going to do
yeah,
with
I
those?
just- I put
A
the rings in the
vulva?
wrong spot.
9
As in
box
a
vulvas?
Yes.
That's
Vulvas. 9
used to
box
have
vulvas. 9 box vulvas.
I had a soap once that was a vulva, but anyway.
I
as
have
you
a
were.
question.
Oh.
How does the public...
A what?
I have a question. How does the public...
A soap?
Shush. How does the Public Disclosure Act work in your world?
In what way?
So,
What-
so in my world, the public...
You just disclose yourself in public?
No, the Public Disclosure Act is a whistleblower act. So
Yes.
and it protects people who whistleblow and say this, whether it's bullying and
Just like
when
that.
I was doing my world of compliance risk,
Entertainment?
shush,
Oh.
compliance risk and
Stuff
and shit. Yeah.
I love that you dabble.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm dabble. Yeah.
It's amazing the shit that my
I'm
organisation
risky.
has made the marketing manager do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Crisis management lead. Anyway, enough said.
Oh yes. My
We had a
time.
pandemic. Schmitty, can you just step right up? Yeah, no worries, I will. The Public Disclosure Act is a no wrong door policy, right? So if I go to IBAC, or I'm in a government world, I go to IBAC.
Not a federal government one, because we don't have,
No, but this is state government.
despite promises.
Yeah, but you could still complain about these things. Anyway, my question to you is, in the world of banking...
Oh, there's a point. Excellent.
Shut up. In the world of banking, like, what
Yes.
protects the people who want to blow the whistle?
Well, certainly they have. Every bank is different, but they'll have a whistleblower policy. So it's a part of what they need to have, which
Is
sets
it
out
smoke
very
and
clear.
mirrors that protect them?
Not always.
Mostly.
But yeah. And there's certain steps that have to be taken. It has to be taken very seriously, obviously reported on. People remain anonymous if they choose. All banks have, very clear training on their whistleblower policy, and very strict guidelines on which way to go if you need help. So I think it's very accepted that it's there, and I know it can be well used. But again, like any corporate, it will depend entirely on the culture.
Okay.
So
Righto.
I've worked in the banks that I've worked with, never a problem. That whistleblower policy is, if it's used, and I certainly have been a part of where someone's used it in teams that I've been involved in, it is taken really seriously.
It should
Because
be
at the
too,
end of the
yeah.
day, there could be a massively systemic issue that's affecting our customers, like this one, for example. And that's your first chance as a risk professional to go, there's something actually really wrong here.
Yeah, and I've
Is
tried
it?
to
Is
talk
it?
to my own internal management, and they're not listening.
Yeah,
So-
and that's where the culture comes in, right? So where the importance is of what's really important, what drives that organisation at its core.
So we had a mortgage with Westpac once,
Did you?
and for a number of reasons we left, having had an unsatisfactory experience. And is it?
Because you're a bit pissed off you couldn't be moving your millions abroad.
Yeah. No, I could. No, I could be.
That'll put it into the relationship.
It was actually
Enough.
It was actually because I got
is becoming unworkable.
I was sexually trafficked, and
Oh.
and so I rang them and blamed them. No, it wasn't that at all. No, we had a mortgage and whatever. So, but what I was going to ask is, if I didn't like the responses I was getting from the person on the phone, in that context, is it reasonable to extrapolate that they will therefore not be using SWIFT and have made up their own international banking system? Well, just because we're talking about banking culture.
Yes.
It is reasonable.
No, absolutely. There's absolutely no connection that I can see with that
so
whatsoever.
happy to go down that.
But thank you very much for asking the question.
Right. Well, no, thank you for clarifying, because I was ready.
That was nonsense.
I was ready to tee off.
Nonsense.
Yes. Risky has been challenged to use that word a lot.
Nonsense.
Owing to a technological error that apparently went undetected for years, Westpac did not report 19.5 million IFTIs, which are known as International Funds Transfer Instruction Reports. Snore. To further complicate matters, 99% of these transactions came from Citibank, a third party using Westpac to, inverted commas, clear its
their
money.
funds. Yes, and usually other funds as well, so domestic transfers as well. So, So what can happen? So some banks don't have their own, licenses, blah, 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 blah. And so they will use a third party to transact for them.
So they go, I don't want to pay for Swift, therefore
I'll go
Westpac
and use this, or I'll get Westpac to do all of my transactions for me as a third party.
They have a system that works.
Yeah, and then the systems work with each other. So essentially, if you were a smaller bank, you would have all of your customers transacting through your app, et cetera, but to transact all that money, Westpac transacts it all and then pushes it back to the smaller bank to push it into the accounts.
Sounds like Chinese whispers. Like if I tell you something,
it can be very cost effective.
And Stuart tells Swanee something, and Swanee tells pre-gaming Schmitty something. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the same.
So if you look at Citibank as a smaller bank, especially with...
Sorry, we're talking about computer transactions. So
we're just pushing money around.
Yeah, I don't think it is quite what you just described, Paul. Nice play, but
it's an analogy, right?
Yeah, it's a bad one. They're just pushing shit around everywhere. The question is, where are the checks and balances? On where the legality is about stuff.
Right. So we're going to talk about this now. So what role did Citibank play? So Citibank was revealed to be Bank A from Austrac's statement of claim, making it one of 4 correspondent banks that use Westpac to lodge its IFTI reports. Citi was quizzed by Labor MP Andrew Lee during the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Economics for its role in providing Westpac with information about payments. And he said, should you not have been more proactive in providing those full details? And Citi Australia's chief executive, Mark Lewitt, replied, I think clearly the responsibility for reporting on these transactions was not ours.
Correct.
Risky?
That is true, right? So yes and no. But it depends how you look at it. But the so what is that they employed, from a government point of view? Yeah, they employed a third party to do that on their behalf. So the third party puts a contract in place to do these. The third party is actually the transactor. They're the person accepting.
If you magic pussy someone into killing someone for you, are you responsible?
Yeah, right. I magic pussy someone.
Yeah. So if you go
okay, yeah,
and they go, I better kill that person.
That's not how magic pussy works.
No,
anyway.
no, I don't think so either.
I wouldn't know.
Because I have a magic pussy.
You
it doesn't work like that.
And so, like
your demonstration.
Like last week when I was doing the booby playing.
Let me explain. Sorry.
I don't know how any of that works.
Because Clarky and Wu don't know how this works. If you were such an amazing lay that the person who had sex with you said, I'll take all responsibility.
Who do you want me to kill?
Yeah, I'll take all responsibility for everything, and I will go and transact $1 billion worth of transactions.
Yep.
You say, well, it's not my fault. I just gave him the $1 billion and he transacted that. And the fact that I've got a magic pussy is neither here nor there.
Does that mean that Citibank has a magic pussy?
Well,
I don't know.
It means that Citibank...
They are successful.
I think it's that Citibank was relying on the fact that they couldn't be held to account for...
As does everyone with a magic pussy.
But they had a contract in place.
Yeah, and they said...
So essentially if
that's right. They said...
So the pussy is the contract.
That's right.
So, no,
the pussy is the joy.
Pussy is Yeah.
Yeah,
The pussy is the
the contract is you go kill someone for me, and the only reason you did that is because I got a magic pussy. Anyway,
but in a banking
Which
context,
otherwise, in
the
this
puss-
context, would be money paid
wouldn't
to
the
the other person.
wouldn't the magic pussy be the person from Citibank who is going to Westpac saying, "Can you do this for
No.
us?" And they go,
Well, the magic pussy is
"100%
the
we
money.
can."
No. Citibank said, "Here, have 99 cents. You can take the last cent on every dollar,
Mm-hmm.
right?" And then Westpac said,
We're absolved of our responsibility.
"That's right." And then Westpac said, "I'll take that $1 on a billion, and that makes me shit tons of cash." I can't do the maths because I'm a bit drunk.
No way.
And so forth and so on. And that's why what you are raising as a story is dirty money. And you're quite right. Go on.
Dirty money. So it's like if you can dip your wick in your
Oh,
pussy
stop it.
and then
Jeez, that escalated.
I really have to edit this shit out. You can't
You can't say
dip
dip
your
your
wick.
it's totally it's a bank
When
to
did
bank
you last do
magic
that?
pussy story, I think is what I'm hearing.
You have a euphoric moment and then you go forth and do whatever you do with the thing that I contracted you to do. And the payment of what I contracted you to do was the euphoric, like the thing that provided the euphoric moment. That's the
Correct.
That's the best I can do in not being
Yeah.
as
I think
filthy as you.
your analogy is a good one.
Is she calling you filthy risky?
Well, I hope so.
I'm calling you
I
filthy
do have a magic
Clarky.
pussy.
Risky so far. Don't we all, Dal?
Yeah.
But I'm not calling risky anything.
So here's the important thing, right? So Westpac says when it realised it had not properly lodged a large number of these reports, it self-reported the compliance breaches to Austrac in August 2018.
Oopsies.
Sibby.
Oopsies. Sorry about that.
No, but so when we're talking about
Self-reporting's good.
whistleblowing and all that sort of thing, yeah,
Self-reporting-
self-reporting's
Westpac
great.
Self-reported.
How do you do that, Whiskey Sour? Do you just drop it in sort of like an informal email? You just sort of go, "Oh, hi, hope
Hey,
this email finds
guys."
you well. FYI,
actually-
we
no,
just
Did you
found
have a
this
good
anomaly.
weekend?
No, you
So,
kind of just go knock on the
whoopsie.
door.
Please,
Yeah, show
thank
them
you
your
in
magic
advance.
pussy and hope for the
kind
best.
regards. Yeah, kind regards. All that kind of stuff. It's just like a one-line. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like
It's not you, it's me.
Swanee,
Yeah, we can't
email
possible-
subject line, whoopsies, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's never an email that anyone
Let me know
wants
if you want to follow
write.
this up. I'll leave it to you.
Usually, it
Would you do
does,
it by email?
You do it by a report, and then that'll get picked up, and then
Don't you-
shit gets real.
Would you preempt it with a phone
there's a
conversation
form,
or a
yeah.
face-to-face chat?
That could happen.
Water cooler.
Jeez.
Yeah,
That could happen, and that could happen both ways.
Would
sometimes.
there be a possibility that I reckon there might be an opportunity if you're doing the wrong thing anyway, where you might go, "Can I magic pussy my way out of this?" Or is that
Well,
not an
that
option?
could be put in the email, yeah. Or the informal chat at the Australia Club. I don't know. Who
Yeah,
am I
that's
to-
what it would
Who
be.
am I to talk?
No, well, it can't be the Australia Club because pussy's aren't allowed.
Exactly. In this realm, there's a lot of informality, I would assume. I
Yes,
don't know.
I hope so.
Mm.
Maybe there's a couple of faxes before
Is
the
there?
email.
Pigeons. Oh, look,
Of
I
what?
don't know. There's always formality. Now, I know there's
But
forms
there
and
would
they have to
be-
be lodged, and then there's process and controls from OzTAC that come across the top of it. And
There would
they
have
were
to
they were
be-
there not long
It's
afterwards.
like when you go to your boss and say, "Oh, I've made this mistake. Would you mind calling the agency, or would you mind calling the client?"
No.
And they get on the phone and go, "Oh, look what's happened here. I'm real sorry, but you know."
Look, I don't think
have
it'd be
a
my
laugh.
boss.
And anyway, I'll
Relationship.
send you an email to confirm what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Why
But
don't you just
about-
come on
I'll put it in
over,
writing
we'll
as well,
just-
but just so you know,
Yeah.
we've had a little bit of a muck up
Oh.
here.
Yes.
I just wanted to get ahead, just so you know personally. I'll let you know in
Look, at the
person.
end of the day, there is always formality.
Yeah, I've got to
Yes.
say, that
I-
is Swanee's background in advertising agencies
Yeah.
coming
I
to
just
the
want you to
fore.
know, I feel like the CEO of Westpac rang the CEO of Austrac and said, "Fuck me, mate. We were magic pussied by Citibank, and now we're all fucked." But anyway, I'll put that in writing in a more professional context so that
Yeah, just so you know.
when this
Just giving you a
gets
heads up here,
subpoenaed-
Dal. Yep.
All right, so Westpac self-reported. However, Austrac alleges that despite senior management being aware of a long-standing non-compliance, they failed to make resolving the problem a priority.
Surprise.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, so regulatory compliance is all about managing data well, says Anthony Quinn, former Macquarie employee turned anti-money laundering compliance expert.
Ooh.
That would be a good job,
Ugh.
although there'd be a little bit too much compliance. I like,
Isn't any job at Macquarie good? Don't they call it like the Millionaire Factory or something?
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I got to say, he's not going back into banking after that choice.
Yeah. He also says generally banks are really bad at this. It's typically where they fall down. The remaining alleged breaches were related to Westpac failing to properly record the origin of international funds transfers, which occurred more than 3.5 million times. It's like Bart Simpson. I think there's an episode in The Simpsons, or it might be Homer. Can't remember.
Is he from Springfield?
He is from Springfield.
No.
Yes.
Oh, we can bring it into every week. Well done.
I don't even know which Springfield he's from, though.
Carla
Does
does.
anyone?
Carla, you
Springfield.
know.
Illinois.
Is it?
I think it's Illinois. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, no, so I think that's from one of my stories.
Schmitty, if you do know
The wingers.
which Springfield he's from, where should you email us at?
1201.
Can someone
At
please
Gmail.
email them?
Yeah, someone fucking email us. And not just shit.
Put your promo code in for Clown Passion.
Clown
Yes,
Passions
exactly.
20. Trouble Wine Clown Passions 20.
Episode 33, we haven't had an email.
We haven't had anything. I mean, pull your socks up, listeners. Try and engage. Anyway.
Listener from Russia, we'd love to hear from you.
Oh, seriously,
Yes, I
we'd
would.
love to
Oh,
hear
it's
from
wrong.
anyone.
It was based on Springfield, Oregon.
Oh.
Yeah.
He might send an email that said, "Would you mind accepting this money on my behalf?"
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Can you get me out of here because I don't like what we're doing to the Ukraine? I reckon that
I
would
need a
be
new wife.
a real...
100%. But you know what? All the people who slip into my DMs, I aka my friends.
I beg your pardon?
Could
They
you
slip
go-
in your DM.
What is that a metaphor for something?
Oh, how old are you? You don't know what slip into my DMs mean.
Oh, where have we been?
Doc Martens? Is that what you mean?
Mate,
Oh,
what do you slip?
you're being facetious, isn't it?
Ah,
Are you
dirty
being
balls.
No, I'm
facetious, isn't he?
completely clueless.
No,
'cause-
so am I.
Really?
Well, you used
Oh.
to...
No,
Oh.
he's not being facetious.
That's
you
what
know,
the young kids say. That's how you get in touch
Oh.
with people. Slip into my
Yeah,
DMs.
you slip into my
Ooh.
DM. Thank you, Carla, for backing
Hang on,
me
is that
up.
what the
that
young
'cause you
people
have a
I'm
message?
sorry
Say?
that Clarky's 100 years old. Turns out he's a wizened old man, but
Is that like
or
Tylenol?
just out of touch.
Carla, do you remember when I said Schmitty's going to give it to me double barrel during this episode? It's starting.
Keep going, Schmitty.
I know.
Keep going.
She's got the vest attached. She's going to go boom later when she detonates.
Yeah.
At any rate,
Mitigate,
Just
Susie.
If
keep
you-
her on the
Mitigate.
even keel.
stop sending me.
Mitigate.
Those of you of the very small numbers that do listen to us regularly, please stop sending me direct text messages. Please email us at trialbywine@gmail.com. I'd be so happy. I set that up months ago. No one bothers us.
Do you
Please,
check it
please,
like
please.
daily?
I do, and
Oh.
it's really sad. It's really sad.
Oh.
Back to the story.
Back to the story. God, what were we talking about? There's been so many stories.
Slipping, pussy, chance.
Oh,
Just a-
enough with the
And
puss.
normally,
I'm loving
normally we
it.
have these same conversations. If you've got a magic
Slip
pussy and
into my
you've
DM.
recently discovered it,
Slip into my DM.
sing it to the world. Podcast about it. Slip into my DM.
DM. Yeah, I'm educated.
Grouse. Who is to blame?
Mm.
Anyone got any thoughts who's to blame so far?
Westpac.
Swanee?
I don't. Yes, I suspect that that's true. I find it interesting that there is a body as such whose job is to oversee this
Do
kind
you
of
find it
activity.
interesting or surprising? Or actually,
Disappointing.
boring?
And you know what I mean when I say I'm disappointed when I say it. I'm a bit
Yeah.
disappointed. I'm absolutely raging. No, I'm disappointed that if there was, and am I understanding correctly that Austrac was around at that time? It wasn't.
Yep.
Didn't.
yes,
come
but it
into
was
this federal-
evolving
So I
as,
think-
as was, it's
Okay.
a new world.
But it existed in some.
does. It's
yeah. So
for
I'm
a
a
very
little.
long time.
I'm a little disappointed with them. And I'm a little disappointed with the management of Westpac because I mean, where does the buck stop? How high up does it have to go? Somebody must have known.
So good
Somebody must
good
have
chat.
known.
Keep those thoughts for when we get to crimes and sentences. So
Okay.
Austrac blames an indifference of senior management towards compliance. It says the bank was warned about its systemic failures but was either slow to act or did nothing about it. Westpac has launched an independent inquiry, don't we know how good they are, to determine who should be held accountable within the bank. The prudential regulator,
that would be a witch hunt.
APRA, that sounds like the acronym for people who are over 50. What's that called? APR.
APR.
APRA. Okay, so the prudential regulator isn't
You need to
isn't
know
a group
that,
of
Clarky.
people over 50. I do. My God.
You're in that group now.
Thank you.
Now you're going on APR holidays and
Thank
stuff.
you for pointing that out,
Woo!
Swanee.
APR
I would have.
Oh, don't worry. I'm quickly following, so I've taken mental
Yeah.
note. Don't worry. I'm not far behind
Good.
you, darling. Now, again, did this already exist, or was this one that came into being?
Oh
as
no,
a result
already
of this?
existed. There's been
so they
people
were around as
around
well,
who
okay.
are over 50 for millennia. I don't
Oh,
know.
boo-boo.
I just got the story. I don't know the detail.
No, I'm just trying
you
to
asking Risky?
hear what they. No, I'm asking you. What did you say they were doing, or what was their view, or what was their?
Authority.
Let's go with the
So they did
Australian
banking,
Performing
insurance,
Rights
and
Association, who
And people like me.
who are the
Yeah,
prudential
yeah.
regulator, will decide whether to pursue
Yeah.
action against Westpac under the federal government's banking executive accountability regime.
100%, because most people who earn 50 cents in the $500,000 of performing rights go, you know, Westpac, you're wrong. I've got my mortgage with you.
Yeah,
You're horrible.
yeah, you've got a
people.
bad culture because I spoke to someone on the phone.
You've got a bad culture. That's right. Yeah.
So, Schmitty, how do we count to 100?
1, 2, skip a few, 99, 100.
That's exactly what we're about to do now, because there's like, what's the impact, what's at stake at the AGM, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, the shareholders had to pay squillions and bazillions and manage all of the payment of the fine. And so then there was an outrage at the AGM.
There should have been an outrage at the AGM.
Yeah.
I mean, just the way the business is being run.
I'll give you one of the
alarming.
quotes about the there's bits between 2 and 99 that we're skipping.
Yeah.
Yeah, but importantly, some of those shareholders would have been like my mum, who has shares in Telstra.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who will own shares in Westpac who are not
Shareholders.
financial people. They're just people who bought stuff.
Loads of them.
100%.
They're just-
Yeah.
And superannuation. People who don't even know they have Westpac shares have it in superannuation.
Because they're blue chip.
People who are seriously affected by
The
this.
vast majority of the population, yeah.
Lots of people would, and they had to pay for this.
Yes. So I'll just tell you a couple of things between 2 and 99, the
Bernadette.
stuff that we skipped. So old mate Mr. Maxted, who left as a result of this, said, we do have lots of contractual arrangements in place. I do think that what we have done so far with regards to remuneration has been adequate, but I understand you might not agree and other people here might not agree. And to your point, Schmitty, get ready. The chairman has also defended the final pay packet of Mr. Hartzer, who was the outgoing CEO.
Yep.
Stating the $2.7 million fixed income to the end of his 12-month notice period was not overly generous. Discuss.
Go fuck yourself.
Well said. It's interesting, right? So, you've got a job and you do it and the bank gets fined a shitload of money, and I'll tell you that amount shortly, but you get paid out your 12-month notice period, and that's not overly generous.
Which is in your contract.
But also in your contract is don't do stuff that's illegal.
Would have to be proven.
Yeah, and you're earning $2.7 million a year. Go fuck yourself. Who the fuck?
Do your job, mate.
this
Don't
is
come up with
interesting.
Westpac Light
is-
or whatever it's called.
The Prime Minister of this country doesn't earn that.
Thank God.
God, nor should he.
Well, he doesn't deserve, nor should
Jesus.
he.
Does he earn?
Oh, you mean Scotty?
Scotty from where?
Not from marketing. Scotty from my arsehole.
Jesus.
And my arsehole's got
Schmitty?
some bad.
Oh,
That was
stop
one of
it.
the smelliest
Oh, no,
poos your
no.
asshole has ever done.
No, You're going to be editing
Yeah.
that.
I agree.
Trust
No,
me.
No, you. Okay.
So blah blah. A whole lot of people lost money. They cut their dividend. Their shares.
They did reduce the
Yeah.
bonuses for the executives. You missed that bit.
They reduced the
They
bonuses.
did.
Well,
The
like,
short-term ones, they don't actually mention the long-term, but they did reduce the...
reduce the bonuses. I'm
Yeah.
questioning whether they should have even got paid, let alone whether they should have got
Oh,
bonuses.
wow.
You know,
There you go.
like Martha Fokker.
But this is interesting. This is where you need to work out who was responsible, who knew about it. So when you're talking about bonuses being reduced, are you talking about that as a blanket sort of statement? I mean, I don't know if you know, because I'm assuming some people wouldn't have known. Some
Yeah.
people would have been heavily aware.
Swanee, what happened
so-
is they finished
Yeah.
podcasting and they went out and said, I asked you two to bring the bins in. You didn't do that, and therefore you don't get any chocolate over Easter.
Same deal.
I'm okay with that.
So
I'm
that's
okay with that
reducing
because, yeah.
bonuses. Does it mean that they don't get clothing next week
Or chocolate
I'm
the
talking-
following
no.
week has
or
a
chocolate
let's
the
say it's-
following week because there's
Yes.
leftovers and we don't know what to do with it. So now you can have some.
Correct.
It's that.
It has to be a consequence.
So shares in the bank were $1.03% lower by 12.50 on Thursday. We're talking about some point in like 2020. I don't know which Thursday, and by now I don't really care.
Sometime in the past.
And yeah, that's right. And they had slipped 9.1% since Austrac allegations were aired last month, which was also not last month. That swiped about 8.7 billion from the company's
billion?
market capitalization.
Ouch.
So when you're talking about the effect on shareholders and superannuation people who have either deliberately invested in this company because it's blue chip or their super has done that, there's a fairly big impact.
Correct.
So this all sort of came to light in with a 20 in front of it. So 2019. In 2020, in July, so 6 or 7 months later, according to The Guardian, Westpac says it has failed to fix an immature and reactive culture of dealing with risks, such as its money laundering and child exploitation scandal, despite pledging to do so almost 2 years ago. The damning findings are contained in a new review of Westpac's corporate culture commissioned by the bank on the request of the prudential regulator, also known as APR, in December after anti-money laundering authorities launched legal action. Actually, no, it was the Australian Performing Rights Association, wasn't it? Yeah, we established
That's
it was an
right,
APR.
yeah.
It said it would reset an existing program designed to deal with the bank's long-standing cultural woes. Remember this, because I'm going to tell you some other stuff that weren't in my
I
notes.
did say culture
Wasn't
earlier,
in my
just
notes.
saying.
I'm telling you, when I rang that person about my home loan, they had a bad culture.
Yeah, well, culture is
and
a
by-
reflection of an
by
organisation
culture, I
at
mean
all levels.
attitude. But if Eric in that whole thing, my dad used to say Eric, referring to Eric Hunt. And we'd go to an event where
Eric
there's lots
Hunt,
of people and
yeah.
go, oh my God, Eric Hunt's here.
Not again.
He
should
hated it
blow
when
this
Eric
place.
was there. Yeah,
What,
exactly.
everyone?
What, everyone?
Everyone?
Apparently he said, reset an existing program designed to deal with the bank's long-standing cultural woes. Remember this, because this is 2020. On the same day, the bank's new chairman, John McFarlane, claimed in an interview that it was hard to attract top executive talent, because pay for banking bosses had fallen across the scandal-ridden sector.
Mm-hmm.
So Westpac admitted most, but not all of the alleged failings. In its new report, the bank said there were 5 root causes of its continuing problems: an organisational construct that creates complexity, whatever.
Shantville.
Too many layers.
Yeah, but that's their responsibility. No one
Correct.
does that for them. An immature and reactive risk culture in non-financial risk management.
What
I
does
mean,
that
what?
really mean? Immature in the sense that they didn't have a mature Like as in an experienced
It means
team? Or...
they
No,
left the
what it
kids to
means
bring
is
the
no
bins
one
in, and the kids were
listens.
never going to bring the bins in.
You can't say
No,
that,
it means that
surely.
no one listens to the risk team. They go, yeah, you're
Carla,
boring.
I think what it means is when you put responsibility on the youngest members of the family, sometimes they just won't do it.
Risky?
I feel like the youngest members of the family said, Snoresville, we're not
All I can
listening
say
to.
is risk is everybody's business. So it should be.
There was a movie called
be
Risky
the junior
Business.
burger, the junior burger, all the way up to the Big Macs, right? So you should.
Risky, you're absolutely right. That is everyone's responsibility.
Correct.
Does everyone in an organisation take that responsibility?
That is a very good question, Smith, and this is what may have happened here.
Yeah. So I feel like that explanation itself is actually saying, you know what? It's not really what we do. We don't really
we're not
own
great
that.
at it,
We just
so
say,
we
you
kind
know,
of just go along with it.
it's
But
not
that would
financial
be
risk
around
management.
data.
No one died. Well, actually, they probably did. Probably quite a few people died.
It's pretty sad what might have happened.
Correct. Failings in the 3 lines of
Of
defense
defense.
model the bank uses to combat fraud and other risks. A lack of management capability and challenges in execution and staying the course.
3 lines of defense. Well, you have first
Sounds like a
line,
toothpaste
second
ad.
line,
You know,
third
you have the
line.
red, the white,
Correct.
the blue.
Exactly.
3 lines of
It's
defense.
It
exactly
does sound like a
toothpaste.
toothpaste ad.
Look, everyone
does.
else can carry on, but Risky, let's talk about the 3 lines of
Fucking
defense.
hell, Swanee, everyone else can carry on. Did you hear that?
bit
Listeners,
fucking rich,
did
isn't
you
it,
hear that? Anyway, as you were, go.
I think I might have to come back next week.
The listeners who have worked in risk can appreciate the 3 lines of defense.
Well, that'll be none of them.
Go right ahead, Risky.
Yeah.
If you have worked in risk, can you email us at
email us
trialbywife@gmail.com? That's why we
Risky
get no
Sarah has no
emails.
Exactly. I don't
that
expect to
code.
hear a single thing. Risky.
yes.
Talk to me about your 3 lines of defense in finances.
Well, it's a traditional way of looking at
Is
risk.
one a water cannon?
I wish that was the
too,
second line,
me
but anyway,
too.
we won't go there. And please edit that out. So you've got first line of defense is usually your front line teams.
The tellers?
They're a first line of defense.
The
You
phone
know,
people that I don't know?
I traditionally work in first line. I have worked in second line. So you've got first line, which is the running of the processes. So they're over across them. They understand the control. Well, they should.
the controls.
They understand the controls. They run the processes. So everything should be running quite nicely. So that's first line defense. So they're the first ones to get onto something that might not
To
be
notice
working
the problem.
quite well.
Yep,
right?
yep.
Then you've got second line. Now, second line are different in every organisation. Sometimes they can be very unattached to the first line and they become problematic at times and argumentative on what the first line should
That's
do.
Schmitty after too many pirate
However, in
kisses.
some organisations, they work really well and there's good relationships between second line and first line to make sure that those process controls are working really well. So second line generally will go to the regulator. They'll work with the regulators. They'll do all of that thing.
So they're the ones that had to say we were magic pussied by Citibank?
Yeah, absolutely. So they will look at legislation and then they will piece it together possibly for the organisation, but then it's up to first line most of the time to get what second line do and try and make it work, which is where the angst is in often organisations. And then there's
like
just,
when you get 3 cups and you put a ball under one and you mix them all around and then you've got to guess which one.
it could be. In some
Sounds like
organisations,
that.
it certainly could be. And then you've got third line, which is your internal audit team. So they're an independent auditor within
No one likes
your
them, do
organisation.
they?
No, not generally.
Yeah.
And
Audit's brilliant.
they'll come over the
Anyway,
top
go on.
of the second line,
I
first
beg
line
your pardon?
processes. They will. They would literally come all over them.
Oh, in the workplace? Surely
Yeah.
that's not okay.
So essentially, if you're in first line,
Now I've heard
They
everything.
can come at
if you're
that.
in first line,
Audit can totally come at
yeah,
that.
they'd love
Come
that.
all over them.
audit-
to be first and second
it
line.
takes a lot to be an auditor in a financial business. Yeah. There's usually not a lot of sense of humour.
How much
It's quite
come do the
dry.
third line have?
Well, I reckon some are, like, I've dealt with a lot of IA people, and back to the go fuck me boots. I reckon they actually do wear them
Do you reckon
on
they have,
on
like-
Teams calls.
big
think-
jars of mayonnaise.
Oh, I think
as
they've got all sorts of.
disguises.
I think they'd be the kind of people that have like serious fetishes, like
Yes,
you know,
that makes sense.
dog licking my balls while I'm on a Teams call, that kind of stuff. Seriously, I've got to go there.
I love the insight
Yeah.
you've brought to this podcast, Risky. Thank you
Just
so
saying.
much.
Not saying that it would
Was
be.
that third line?
Yeah, that was
third
third line.
We don't
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
the second line. They
Yeah,
can come
okay.
after me.
Second line, don't wear
Okay.
pants on the Zoom call. And first line, normally
Just
dressed.
running around doing everything.
Yeah.
They're just in the shop. They're doing stuff.
Yeah, probably
they're
not
the
even on the
doers.
Zoom
The other
call,
ones
they're
are
in
the
the office.
overseers, and the other ones are the
mayonnaises.
internal regulator as such. So
Yeah.
they try and pick up the things so you can self-identify to the regulator. That's what they're there for.
So I want to point out a couple of things. So one is Westpac said that it had been too focused on finding individuals to blame for problems when they arose, rather than addressing systemic issues. If you go looking for people to blame rather than taking responsibility as an organisation, you never fix anything.
Correct. You got to look
And
for
here
the
we are.
systemic cause. Fix that, and then look at the people.
Yep. So then,
What's the problem? Yeah.
So then, the bank said it
What's
was
the root
making
cause?
changes, including increasing board scrutiny of risk and hiring 270 new risk officers.
What actually happened by them doing that is it
270
drove up
sounds
the
like
wages. It was awesome for me. Thank
Yeah,
you.
right.
Thank you, Westpac.
So Westpac has historically been one of the most aggressive banks in its dealing with regulators. It was the only bank to fight a rate rigging lawsuit brought by ASIC, the Australian Securities Investments Commission, and led lobbying efforts against responsible
Responsible lending.
against responsible lending rules. So
The
you're getting a
Wagyu
picture,
and
right?
Shiraz case.
Now I want to
They're
tell you
disgusting.
about here's where Westpac. Remember, I said they were one of my sources. I'm going to tell you about their AML CTF policy. So their policy says we'll go introduction and scope. As with any financial institution, there is a risk of Westpac Group products and services being used to launder money and finance terrorism.
Counterterrorism.
So, Australian law and applicable local laws in the jurisdictions in which we operate requires us to put training, processes, and systems in place to identify, manage, and mitigate this risk. We do this to protect the group's reputation, to comply with relevant laws, and to be a good corporate citizen. Failure to do so may result in social harm, significant penalties, including legal and regulatory action. So this is off like this week. So we're now in 2022 in April, and this is what's on their website now. So their anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism funding policy says it sets out how the Westpac Group complies with its legislative obligations, applies to all business divisions and employees, permanent, temporary, and third-party providers working in Australia, New Zealand, and overseas. So Westpac, as a result of this back in 2019 and 2020, they were fined $1.3 billion as a result of this. So you think we spoke about the effect on their share price and all of that.
Would it cost them more to get a new CEO?
Who pays the 1.3 billion?
Us or the people who
Shareholders.
bank
The
with them.
shareholders, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
True fact.
No.
Risky sour.
True fact. I read it. I googled it
At the
and
end
I
of the
read
day,
it.
the shareholder will
Therefore,
pay because of the share price.
yeah.
Yes.
And
Okay.
also because it comes off the bottom line of the bank,
It comes
which
out of the
is
bottom
publicly
line.
listed, and therefore
But possibly there's provisions made
no
for
one
that.
in the bank is pulling the money out of their pocket.
No.
The bank is doing that at the expense of
But
the people who
all
own it,
corporate
who are the
companies make
shareholders.
provisions for loss.
Not
Whether
for
they made
loss
that
by
big a
being
provision.
dodgy fuckers.
No. But
Um,
whether the provision was there,
But also,
then the
I
shareholder
wanted
wouldn't have lost at all.
I want to tell you this
Same.
story because we've just discussed all of that, which was historic. This story is also historic. It comes from, again,
Bad
The
Buzz.
Guardian,
No.
Squid
Did
Game.
you say game?
Again, I
Oh,
said.
again.
Not
Oh,
a
sorry.
game.
Oh, sorry.
And it's from the 30th of November, 2021. So we're now, a year or two after they reported, probably 2 years after they reported. Westpac admits it broke law and agrees to pay $113 million in penalties. ASIC. Sorry. Before I say this, I think Westpac. So all of the the crimes weren't investigated, so that they kind of went, "That's enough. We won't go any further than what happened."
And it will depend
That'll
on the
do,
regulator. So AUSTRAC will look after some things. APIA. Damn APIA. APIA looks after others, and then ASIC will oversee others.
Yeah.
So APRA can only go so far in the regulations that they control.
So there were two regulators who were deciding over this or presiding over this, or I don't know.
Yep.
One of them dropped it and then the other one dropped it. So they
Yep.
went, all right, we're not going to go any further. But then, so this is after all of that,
And then ASIC will come in.
ASIC hit the bank with 6 lawsuits over shoddy treatment of customers. See, I told you that person from the mortgage team wasn't my favourite, including dead people fees. Westpac has admitted it broke the law and agreed to pay penalties totaling $113 million after the corporate regulator hit the bank with 6 lawsuits over shoddy treatment of customers that included charging dead people fees and lambasted the bank for a poor compliance culture that needs urgent improvement. So we're talking about, 2 years ago, them self-reporting, them getting fined $1.3 billion, them having this amazing policy explaining to us all of the challenges that happen and why it's important to have a good policy. If you're doing something wrong and you get fined $1.3 billion and then a little bit later you're doing the wrong thing again, and to go back to this bit of Westpac has historically been one of the most aggressive banks in its dealings with regulators. It was the only bank to fight a rate rigging lawsuit brought by ASIC, the Australian Securities Investments Commission, and led lobbying efforts against responsible lending rules. It feels like one of these kids is not like the other one.
Like Cartman.
It's like Cartman, yes. It should be on the naughty map. Anyway, that's the end of my story. I would now like you to consider your crimes and your punishments. Swanee, you know you will always love going first.
No, I don't.
Oh, really? Sorry.
No, I don't know. Oh,
Thank you.
I know. I didn't know if we were going to get to another point in the storyline, so now I have to work out who I think I would punish.
So remember, I'll read you this little bit just to help you understand the seriousness of getting it wrong. And it doesn't mean that they deliberately did this, and it doesn't mean that anyone intended this. But this is why we have regulations, right? Some of the countries that funds were transferred to included the Philippines, Mexico, and other Southeast Asian countries. It appears that at least 250 customers were able to conduct suspicious transactions to these countries. It has been alleged that these transactions were related to child sex trafficking in those countries. Discuss.
Right. So that was never raised again. I mean, I know that we started off with that, but I suppose it's an entirely different in-depth investigation, but did anything happen to the 250 people where they had been red flagged?
There was cases
Yep.
where some of those 250 had past dealings in pornography, etc., and are being investigated, if not already in jail.
Is it fair to say though that because
There you go, result.
because of the
Bit of a long way around though, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that because of the fact that they didn't do that sort of end-to-end identification, they couldn't actually identify who the 250 people were? They just had the way the transactions went through the system were red flags, but Westpac couldn't then go, well, these are the people that they should have been able to identify through their own process?
Yes. So, if we look at the 23 million transactions, that's a lot, right?
Yeah. And
So
this
if
is
you,
250.
and you knew that it was all under 3,000, right? So if you were a person and you were doing bad things, you would probably look for certain amounts of money that would be well under an appetite for someone to have a look at. Yeah, and then do them over and over again. So this has been happening to Australia for years. If you were smart at it, and these people are, because they need to get the money to where they need it to be to to do what they do, they get really great at it. So they know that they might know that the bank system has a trigger at $801 as opposed to $900, right?
Yep.
Because they might know someone, or they listen to a podcast like this, and so, you know, Risky Sal gets a bit
God, if
pissed
they're
and
getting their
says,
advice from a
We didn't
podcast
tell
like
you.
if you
this.
I doubt that
please
very
email.
No one learns anything from us.
But that's the thing.
We are the most ignorant podcast. Anyway,
Yeah.
But also, it doesn't take much. Like if you take notice and if you have intentions, you
unless
always
it's
find a
about
way around
soap
it.
making.
Yes.
Yeah, then you're an
Unless it's about
expert.
soap
Yes.
making Risky, and then I will tell you how to do that.
But did I tell you about a soap I had as a folder? Anyway,
Funnily
yeah, I
enough,
did today. Sorry, I don't know how it came back to that again. I'm terribly sorry. I bought it down in Tasmania. Mona, is it Mona? No, not Mona.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that where they've got the warm
Yeah, and it
vaginas?
was one of those vaginas, and it was a soap, and
Couldn't
That's
eat a
something
whole
nice
one.
to pick up at the gift shop.
and the soap's name was Risky Sour. Could you believe it? I
No
couldn't
way.
believe it. Yeah, so I
A
had to buy
vagina
it
after your own heart.
and then rub it against myself in the shower. But anyway, let's move on.
Stop it.
Well, I can't even remember what I was saying. But at the end of the day, there will always
And I've had too much pirate juice. Anyway.
of those 23 million.
You've come out the
If you
other
look
end.
at 250 people doing that, they knew what they were doing. They were very much
You've drunk yourself sober.
That's what I usually
exploiting something that they've found, and they obviously talk, and it lasted for as long as it did for them. And that will always be across the world. There's
that why we have
openings
regulations?
everywhere. That's why we have the regulations. But
And so if you choose not to do them
The
and
other-
to develop your own dodgy light
But
system.
the problem also with regulation, and we tipped on this before, is it's not until something that goes wrong. So the regulators can't look into a crystal ball and go, oh, I think we might think this will go home. And
No,
so
but
when
if-
it goes wrong, then the regulation, then everyone else has to
I,
catch up.
Then
I
they
understand
step
that,
in.
but if the
Yeah, then they
world
come in,
sets
yeah.
up a system and one bank who has form says, you know what, we think that's too expensive, we'll build our own. We'll get Raj from IT, is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah.
To
Right.
build his own system.
He's working on one now.
Oh, Jesus. Is that to bring the bins in? Or?
Yeah. He was
Yeah,
meant to,
that's
but no,
the
he's
one
working
we're
on
supposed
a
to
new
He's
Swift.
supposed to be
Oh,
busy.
God.
That's the problem.
Next week,
Raj is too
something will
busy
go
looking at
out and
the
grab
bins.
those bins. It won't be a human.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But so I think if there's a system in place and you opt out of it and then you go, we'll build our own, and your own fails.
Do you think it might be a bit of a case of build it and they will come? And by they will come, I mean the terrorists.
not all over me.
And the people who are the money launderers. No, not all over you. But you know what I mean?
That's
it's
the
sort of
worst
like,
field of
oh,
dreams.
do you know what? We
If
thought
I
we'd
build
create
it, the
we
terrorists
thought
will
we'd create
come.
our own version. It must have been like all of them must have been having a chat to each other going, oh, you're not going to believe what Westpac have
Yeah,
gone and
or
done
maybe
for
one
us.
of them.
Awesome.
Browse.
Maybe
Yeah,
one of them,
thank
you know,
you,
like
Westpac.
in the Ku Klux Klan, and I don't know a lot about it, but you know, there's like a network of people who all kind of help each other out.
That's exactly that network.
It,
They're
it
exactly the
feels
same.
like there's something
And they'll
going
bounce
on
it.
here where we go, oh,
It was on the
our
newsletter.
friends might
Yeah.
all get caught
On
out
the
here.
dark
Let's
web.
do something.
Westpac introduces
Yeah,
the light.
yeah.
I can't
Which is
remember.
way,
Yeah,
way
yeah.
better than the world's Swift system.
Yeah, you won't have to put $9,999
Terrorists
in
celebrate.
the bottom
Terrorists
of your
unite.
suitcase anymore.
And
Yeah.
then, we were just immature
Exactly.
in our compliance thing. Like, you just...
Someone made a call.
Who would have made that? Would you know who
Oh,
would make the call initially? Would it be a CEO? Would it be a CEO? Who? I wouldn't have a clue. I don't know
It
what
would
I'm
be
talking about. It's not a bank
difficult to understand because obviously I've never worked in their space. But
No.
you know, if a product is developed, it goes through so much. You've got to look at
scrutiny.
so
I'm
much
sure.
scrutiny. But then it depends. It depends again to the culture. What is important to the bottom line of that company? And if there is someone that comes up with a grand idea and you know, and they've got the right sponsors and everything goes through, it goes through.
But also, if all they're focused on is the bottom line, this is why this happens, and they can argue it by a immature culture, but ultimately they're focused on dollars, and they don't really care what that impacts, because they should know that the risk of not getting this right is exactly what's happened here. Back to crimes and sentences. Anyone?
Yeah, I just want to ask you a question. What is the period of time? What is the cutoff for responsibility? 2020, 2021?
Are you seriously asking me
2022?
that?
Yeah, I'd like a date
for where we're calling Westpac people responsible?
I feel like if you're over 18, you're responsible.
No, I'm asking at what point did we say that the board of Westpac and the executive team, when did they say, oopsies, we'll fix it, and when did they say everything we've done is
Oh,
fine?
no. So I think the point is they have never said that, right?
The reason I'm asking is because I'm looking at the board of
Let's
Westpac.
go with
So
the
John
ravages of Schmitty.
board of directors, and I'm only going to call out people up until 2021 who are board of directors on Westpac. Shame on you.
I really like John. It's a nice guy.
Shut up, Risky.
Sorry.
Directors.
It's not
well,
your. It's
tough.
not. You're not
He's been a-
sentencing.
Really lovely man.
Yeah, he might be. Director since February 2020 and chairman since 2020.
Yeah, so he took over from the chairman that got
Came after.
ousted because of this controversy. So I think he went in temporarily, but I think he's been voted in.
It sounds like Carlton when they went through a whole lot of coaches.
Sounds like Essendon.
Westpac
to be
still
honest.
have a bit of that to be done. Go, Schmitty.
Tough. Sorry if I'm inappropriately blaming you, but I blame you because you're still the
And he could
chairman.
also send you an email at trialbywine@gmail.com to explain why he's not responsible.
And he may.
And put Schmitty in the subject line, I'll pay attention. Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer since 2019.
Yeah, that was also after Brian.
It's been there since 2017. Are you going to tell me it's after Brian? Since 2017. Thank you. Right. I'm going to skip belligerent.
It's unlikely that our listeners are laughing at this point, isn't it?
No, I like it. They're listening at this point. No, they've probably opened up the Westpac website too, and we're going through the
2018.
Name and shame,
There are-
Schmitty. Name and shame.
the list of people who are going to sue us.
2019. There are several members of the board who are still there. In my experience, when a board fucks up like this, at this level, they no longer exist. And yet at least 4 of those members still exist. So I am sending them to Try by Wine World.
Yes.
They're going to Peasant World.
Yes.
There will be absolutely no luxuries for them. All of their probably multi-million-dollar, at least 17-figure salaries gone ski. No fun zone. You're at the back behind Ed Gein, behind everyone else we've sent to Try by Wine World.
Gonski's the chairman at ANZ, so just...
I didn't say Gonski. I said Gonski. I said you're
Are they
gone.
the same person?
If you're just going to mock
sorry, I'm
me,
just saying.
I'm just going to stop.
You're just going to Gonski. No, keep going. I think you're on a roll and you're nailing it.
Where are they going?
Trial by Wine World.
At the back of Peasant World, which is worse than Peasant
Wow.
World. Basically, where all the pigsties are and all the animals
Oh, the
are.
back. Wait,
Oh,
nice. Where all the equipment that
Not
runs the
where the
centre kind of thing.
magic
That's
is.
right.
are.
Yeah, what do you
The
call that?
amenities?
Yeah, like
Operations?
yes,
Yeah, but it's like it's not great. It's like where
but where they keep the tractors and the
that's
it-
right.
lawnmowers
All
and
the
hoes.
shitty bits out there. There's no fun.
Is it like in Thunderdome
no-
where there was the pigs who generated the electricity?
Oh,
It's not like
I never
purgatory.
saw it.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, let's move on then. Continue.
No, it's worse than
It's worse
purgatory.
than
It's worse than purgatory because if you are a very, very rich person and or you've done exceptionally successfully in life, i.e. being in the board of Westpac, and you find yourself in the back of fucking Beyond, otherwise known as back of Try by Wine World, where there's like pigsty that you've got to muck out. There's, sometimes you have to support the various psycho killers we've set there.
Oh, God, yeah.
I'm sentencing the people who created
who
the system.
knew that the system has regulations to stop that.
but are
and,
you?
and ignored
Yeah.
it and allowed it to happen.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah, because
But are you? Do you think the board was truly aware? Is that an assumption I'm making?
if they weren't doing their job.
Doing their
no,
job.
with the
That's
executive
I'm
team.
bothered.
Yeah, that's
Because
true.
that is the point of a board
Yeah.
is to do the governance of an organisation. And if you're not doing that, you have no right to call yourself
You should be neck deep in pig shit in Trial by Wine World.
Out the back.
Out the back.
Or what I heard in my earphones just then was neck dick. So you should be neck dick.
I feel like that's what you heard because that's what I said. But, only listening back to this podcast will actually reveal the truth.
Yeah, so neck dick.
Yeah,
to
they're going to be neck dick
board.
in shit fuck.
And I will absolutely say anyone post this period is exonerated.
I'm going to try a slightly different track.
That's because that's what you do,
just
darling.
I like it.
That's because I do. I know. But I take issue, and as I said before, I'm disappointed. I don't know at what point Austrac thought, oh, it's got to, what was it? How many transactions were there? 2.3?
23 million.
But I do wonder at what point, where are their sort of alarms that go off for Austrac? I mean, if it's a government body and their sole job is to be preventing and detecting and responding to criminal abuse of the financial system, I would have thought that this seems to be a fairly large, it's one of the big banks. They're in a lot of trouble for doing it. So where was Austrac until, someone sent the email to go, oh, oops, sorry, we look like we've had a little bit of a problem here.
We got magic pussied by Citibank.
Yeah, so did Austrac have them on their radar? Were they even aware? I find that seems to be a little bit disappointing that they were unable to sort of find this themselves and then perhaps go to Westpac and say, what are you guys doing? How would I punish them? I don't know. Do these people even care? I doubt it. Maybe a corporate day too. Trial by Wine World.
Corporate day,
instead of their usual junket where they get to go somewhere fabulous and spend money on a conference, they can do trial by. That can be their punishment. Instead of having a nice conference that year, they can go trial by wine world.
Can they go to sex trafficking world within trial by wine world and get sex trafficked for a day?
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a big punishment. But yeah, sure.
Sure. Nice.
Sure. Oh, good, she's back. Tell her I'm done. Oh no! Oh my god! She says, "I can hear everything. Yeah. I hear everything.
I'm all
see
seeing,
everything.
all
I'm
hearing,
omnipresent."
And that's
I wish our viewers, if our listeners could see her, she has a light behind her, so it actually looks like
She's an angel. An angel.
She's an angel.
Says no one ever. Yeah, interesting. So I'm gonna go.
Maybe when she's having a bit of pillow talk with Tony, and they're talking about risk
9
and
months in risk.
Angel.
Yeah.
Where are your boots?
Yeah, exactly.
And where's the dog?
Let's do a bit of risk talk, pillow talk.
Goodness. So I'm not going to blame the regulator. I feel like that's like blaming the police for someone committing a crime.
Oh God, I feel very bad.
I'm gonna say that I think this bank has a terrible culture. If we're still talking November 2021 and they're still being fined, so they've fought against legislation that stops this stuff. They've literally enabled sex trafficking. Whether it's intentional or not is completely irrelevant because there is legislation in place. There is a system in place and they've gone, let's save a little bit of cash and develop our own. None of that's okay. And then they're charging dead people fees. So I think there is absolutely a culture. I think I was onto it when I spoke to the mortgage person.
I'm surprised you should have called Austrac and said, look, I've got a feeling about this mob.
I should have reported it back then. So
something's not quite right. I'm getting a whiff of sex trafficking.
Risky Sour needs to have lots of many drinks.
After that, yeah.
Yeah. But so I 100% hold a lot of people in this bank accountable. This is a bank who has said, we understand that there is legislation to prevent anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism. We understand we're a part of all this, and we can actually tell you what they both mean, and we can also tell you why it's a bad thing, but we just don't give a shit. I'm not really okay with that. For people outside of Australia, Australia has what we call the Big Four, a banking system where there are 4 big banks and then a whole lot of smaller banks, building societies,
digital banks,
money lenders, all these sorts of things. I want Westpac struck off the Big Four. I don't want a Big Three. I'm not a fan of that either, but I just want them to be like the Oompa Loompa of the banking industry. I
The
want
karma.
them to be super little. We had this discussion. We can't. What do we call them?
I think dwarfs probably out too.
Little people.
Vertically
Little
challenged.
people.
Yeah, but so if you're one of the big banks, do you call the other banks little banks? I don't want Westpac to be a big bank. I want the little banks to call Westpac their incy wincy teeny looks up a lot bank.
Little local credit union.
Basically, like when you lend your kid $5,
Little
that's Westpac for me. Risky?
Do I get to?
Yeah, 100% you get to.
The only person I want to put into Schmitty's world is that one person that said to the other person, no, don't worry about it. That's the way we always do it.
Yeah.
That's the
there
person.
was that person.
Whoever that person was, because there will always be decisions that are made or processes developed that are never entirely perfect because they're developed by humans. It doesn't matter how many controls or data or systems you put across it.
Yeah.
Everything is driven by the human body, right? Human mind, human spirit. But that person on that day to that other person that went, this looks wrong, I don't feel comfortable with it, said, no.
That was that person I spoke to from mortgage.
Yeah, and then
I
they
bet
picked
it
up
was
the
the
phone
same
and there
person.
were you on the other side.
I bet
amazing.
it was the same person.
Their dual functionality of role is some...
Yeah.
just
Old mate in
amazing.
charge of risk
Which
management
is down to cost management.
rang the person in front of mortgage lending.
But that's the person that I want to put away.
Right.
As much as all of those other people
Will
absolutely
you nut punch
deserve
them
it,
as well?
but I know that in that first line defense, that's what happened. Someone saw it. Someone saw it every day. Someone said something and the other person put it away. And that's where the culture allowed them to do that. But they didn't have the gumption of spirit to go, you know what?
You're right.
You're right. I'm going to take it through to my whistleblowing, whatever, up to my manager. And then again, if you get a hit back, you go again. And you go again and you go again because that's the risk manager that I am.
Yeah. And so they go to back of Trial by One World.
Oh, I reckon they go even further.
I bet your boss
I
is
reckon
there when they see you.
They're
Yeah.
down the back of the serial killer's sewer.
Oh,
Is it the prequel? Is it Manhunter or one of those from that whole Hannibal?
Mindhunter, perhaps?
No, there was one where old mate at the back of the farm used to put the bodies in with the pigs, and the pigs
Yeah,
would
and
get
they
rid
ate
of
the
them.
bones and stuff.
Is that where that
Yeah.
person is going?
I don't know.
That might be a story I cover in the future. But yes, pigs definitely like to eat
They
people.
do. They
Very
love
quickly.
people. And it gets rid of them
About
and puts
20,
them into the
20
atmosphere.
minutes. 20 minutes of human
It might be a
bodies
story you're going
consumed,
to cover in the future based on an act you did in the past, but you'll
No.
tell it through the third person
She never
about
killed
someone
anyone,
else
it
who
was
did
just
that.
pigs.
There are stories about that. All right. Well, excellent story. Thank you very much, Clarky. And Risky, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for
Really,
having
really,
me.
really, really, really good.
I've had a wonderful time.
Very interesting, Risky.
and so I've just felt so welcomed and loved.
We enjoyed having you too.
Except by him because he's a
That's
chump.
weird.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, he's not into magic pussy. Anyway, moving right along. As I
He
said,
doesn't like fish fingers either. But anyway.
no, he doesn't like seafood at all. Anyway, moving right along.
Correct.
As I say every week, miss you guys already, and thank you very much. Okay.
Love you long time.
Bye.
Ciao.
bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.